sitting there, alone, the phone screen blank, no messages, no calls, no sign of her for 2 days. Yet in your mind, the recent moments remain vivid. The tender gaze, the gentle embrace, the unmistakable closeness. Clearly she felt something, but now there is only silence. We begin to feel uneasy. To be left in silence is one of humanity's most primal fears, the fear of not being enough. But what if I told you that silence is not rejection? It is a mirror, revealing who we truly are when stripped of validation. In that moment, a person either falls apart or stands firmer than ever before. 1. Be the wall, not the wind. In a relationship, emotion is inevitable. Women, especially in the early stages of emotional connection, often express intense feelings, sometimes gentle, sometimes angry, sometimes withdrawing without explanation. This isn't a flaw. It's part of the human emotional fabric. But the essential question is this: how do you, as a man, respond to these waves? The image of the wall isn't a random metaphor. It reflects an ideal inner state, a person who remains grounded, uncued by external turbulence. The wind, her shifting emotions, cannot crack a wall built from calm self-control and emotional discipline. The wall doesn't resist the wind. It simply stands, firm, constant, unmoved in the flow of feeling. Stability is something women sense, not with logic, but with intuition. When she withdraws, grows distant, flares up unexpectedly, or appears indifferent, that is not the time to react emotionally. If you panic, seek validation, flood her with messages, or show insecurity, you've been swept up by the wind. That reaction silently tells her you cannot govern yourself. And that, though unspoken, is what makes her feel unsafe, uncertain, and begin to pull away. On the other hand, if you remain steady, not overreacting, not demanding answers, not trying to control her, you become a symbol of emotional security. In a world increasingly reactive and unstable, a man who stays composed is rare, and that rarity becomes magnetic. You don't always need to say something to fix it. Sometimes saying nothing, but showing up with grounded presence is the most powerful response. When she throws emotional tests your way, your refusal to flinch, react negatively, or flee shows that you can contain what she herself cannot articulate. She may not say it aloud, but deep down, she will recognize you as a reliable anchor. The wall is not silent out of coldness, nor is it detached. It is a master of timing. When she's in a storm of emotion, your attempts at logical explanation or debate won't work. Emotion does not respond to reason. In that moment, your calm silence and unshaken demeanor are the only messages she can truly hear. The wall is not where she finds answers, it's where she finds peace to seek them herself. The crucial difference between a wall and the wind lies in their nature of reaction. Wind arises only from disturbance, a force, an imbalance. The wall exists, regardless of what surrounds it. In relationships, the man who acts like the wind is driven by the woman's behavior. Her silence brings his panic, her distance his desperate texts, her coldness his jealousy and accusations. Every one of these responses stems from inner instability. The wall is the opposite. Whether she loves or resents you, stays or drifts, you remain yourself. You do not shift based on someone else's behavior. That doesn't mean you are indifferent or uncaring. It means you don't let fleeting emotional behavior redefine your self-worth. And in not being defined by outer emotions, you become a sovereign being. That's an attraction that endures. In Stoic philosophy, the greatest clarity lies in discerning what we can control and what we cannot. The feelings of another, especially the emotional shifts in love, are beyond your control. But your response, that's always within your grasp. And that is where all your focus should lie. If she grows distant, it says nothing about your worth. But if you lose your inner balance in response, then you become your own unlight. Being the wall doesn't mean bracing to appear strong. On the contrary, it's a relaxed strength, an inner steadiness that asks for no validation. When you stop trying to become something to earn love, you start being yourself. And that authenticity, combined with emotional discipline, becomes irresistibly compelling. Women don't seek perfection, but they are drawn to the man who doesn't waver under small storms. In a world spinning faster by the day, the one who holds his center becomes a source of safety. And safety is not something you declare. It's something she feels when she's near you. A grounded man is like solid earth in the middle of the ocean, a place where a woman can anchor when her own world turns chaotic. When she tests you with silence, distance, or criticism, what she's really asking is, can you still stand tall when I'm not holding you up? If you respond with weakness, control, or panic, you've told her you rely on her for your balance. But if you remain calm, focused on your work, training, growth, she will realize you didn't come to her seeking completion. You were already whole. This is especially crucial in the early stages of a relationship. That's when a woman tests the most. Not to manipulate, but to discover. Are you built for the long haul? Or are you just another man who crumbles when not coddled? She doesn't need your reaction. She needs your steadiness. And if you are the wall, unshaken, you will pass those tests. Remember, the wind can shake many things, but it cannot topple a wall. And when you become that wall, quiet, unyielding, not pleading, you become the embodiment of something rare, self-mastery. In love, self-mastery does not kill romance. It deepens attraction, because you're not just offering emotion, you're offering grounded energy, the very thing every woman craves deep down. The wall does not waver, but it is not closed off. It offers presence, peace, and safety, without needing reassurance in return. You don't strive to be loved. You simply live by the values you've forged. And if she's worthy, she will feel it. If not, your steadiness remains and your journey continues. 2. Let her be free and keep the door open. In love, one of the most common and instinctive reactions when sensing distance from someone we care about is to try to hold on. That could mean constant texting, calling, or treating in every way to clarify emotions. Yet clinging isn't always love. It is often fear of abandonment in disguise. Meanwhile, a man who understands and lives by Stoic philosophy chooses a completely different path. He lets her walk away freely while keeping the door open. Letting someone you love go is not surrender, nor is it accepting defeat. It is a profound gesture of respect, not just for her, but for yourself. A man who chooses not to interfere is one who has transcended the need for control. He understands that genuine affection cannot be forced, but can only grow in freedom. Freedom here means more than not interfering with her decisions. It also means not applying emotional pressure, not making her feel forced into choosing. A grounded man will not place a woman in a position where she must respond immediately or clarify her feelings while she's still seeking peace. He understands that if someone must be held back to stay, then they were never truly staying. Instead of asking, "How do I keep her from leaving?" the Stoic man asks a different question. If she needs to leave, can I preserve my dignity and comfort? This is the essential difference between impulsive action and disciplined response. Keeping the door open while continuing on the path of self-development is the clearest sign of inner maturity. Keeping the door open doesn't mean standing there waiting. It's not passive hope or blind longing. It is the willingness to welcome her return without sacrificing your growth, your self-respect, or your life's momentum to make it happen. That man keeps living, keeps moving forward, keeps his values firm, as though nothing has changed, because his inner state is not ruled by what lies beyond his control. She may need time. She may need space to reflect, to feel, to heal, or even to explore some part of herself. In times like these, the silence and space you grant her may be the greatest gift. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for someone is not to be by their side, but to give them room to truly hear their own heart. Your presence during this period is not measured by the number of messages you send, the calls you make, or how often you express concern. It is the energy you radiate, your steadiness, your calm, your refuse to be swept away by emotion. She will sense it, even if you say nothing. Silence can speak volumes, especially when it comes from intention and clarity. The key is not to shut the door out of hurt. Many, when they feel left behind, choose to protect themselves by cutting off contact, acting resentful, or displaying cold indifference. They believe this shows strength, but in truth, it's just unprocessed pain reacting. A Stoic needs no such defense. He is strong enough to leave the door open without needing to stand watch over it. In relationships, it's often during silence and distance that everything becomes clear. If you respond with negative emotion, anger, blame, or accusation, you blur the image of yourself in her mind. But when you keep living with serenity and without judgment, you leave behind an impression, not of someone abandoned, but of someone who honors the other's journey. By giving her freedom, you also declare something vital, that you are complete without needing someone else to fill your inner space. You do not need a relationship to feel worthy, because your worth remains intact even in Stoicism days. And that's where real attraction is born, not from need, but from wholeness. Keeping the door open also means something deeper, the refusal to judge. You don't need to fully understand why she left, nor do you need to accept or reject it. You only need to keep your heart open enough that she knows there is no bitterness, no grudge, and that if fate allows, two mature souls can reunite without the need for endless explanations. To do this, you must release the desire for immediate satisfaction. The ability to withhold reaction requires mental discipline. Instinct will urge you to act, to fix, to change the outcome. But reason, when guided by understanding, will remind you not everything must be fixed at once, and not everyone must be convinced to stay. Sometimes letting go is the wisest course. If she leaves, you do not need to label that act as wrong or bad. It's simply part of the relationship's unfolding. When you refrain from assigning blame, you free yourself from hostility. And when you maintain neutrality, you keep the door open, not just in the literal sense, but within, where no one is excluded, yet no one is allowed to dominate. In Stoicism, one of the most vital principles is distinguishing between what we can control and what we cannot. The feelings, actions, and choices of others lie beyond our grasp. The only thing we can control is our response. And if we respond with equanimity, with self-respect, with personal growth, then whether she returns or not, we have already won. If she does return, it won't be because you chased her. It will be because she realized you never lost yourself. She will remember you not for your words, but for how you kept living with quiet strength, even in her absence. And if she doesn't return, you will still be fine, because you didn't trade your principles to hold on to what no longer fit. You acted like a man of integrity. And a man of integrity truly loses, because his worth is not measured by another's presence, but by his unsearing alignment with who he is. 3. Your silence, an irresistible voice. In an age where everyone rushes to be heard, the one who knows how to be silent with intention becomes a symbol of the distinction. Most people respond to silence with fear. They worry about being forgotten, about losing their worth. But to one who practices emotional discipline and lives in the spirit of Stoicism, silence is not a void to be filled, but the clearest space for inner reflection. Timely silence holds more power than any justification. It is not avoidance, it is control. When a woman grows distant, silent, or tests you through emotional withdrawal, most men rush to act, texting, calling, writing long messages to explain or win back attention. Yet those actions often signal a lack of inner control. The grounded man chooses the opposite, purposeful silence. That silence does not stem from helplessness, but from knowing your place in the story. When you don't react impulsively, you're sending a message that you are not easily shaken. You do not rely on others to define your emotions or your value. And most importantly, you do not play by rules crafted in emotional instability. She will sense it. In the quiet, she begins to wonder, why isn't he responding? Why isn't he like the others, frantic, pleading, making noise? What is he thinking? Have I lost something rare? These questions do not arise from logic, but from intuition. And once triggered by deep silence, intuition becomes a powerful magnet. Silence elevates the value of presence. When you are silent with composure, you reveal that you are not someone who reacts to every signal, not someone always available for emotional demand. You show that you have boundaries, and boundaries are one of the most attractive qualities in any lasting connection. A man without them is seen as predictable, controllable, but the one who withholds his presence with intention becomes intriguing, weighty, and invites deeper curiosity. Silence is also a form of communication. In a world full of words, silence is what compels others to truly listen. When you choose to say nothing while maintaining serenity, you are declaring that you are not controlled. You do not chase. You do not demand explanation. You give the other space, and you guard your own. That says more than any declaration. You are steady and self-possessed. Silence reveals the true nature of a relationship. When you grow quiet, if the other person truly cares, they will return on their own. If not, your silence shows you the truth. No debates, no interrogation. In silence, truth rises naturally. And by not reacting, you position yourself as the clear-eyed observer. Often, the woman is not deliberately pulling away. She's simply waiting to see whether you become unstable like others before you. Your silence is the counter test, not her testing you, but you testing whether the relationship can grow on stable ground. And if it can't, then your silence is an act of self-respect. A man who is calm in silence is not indifferent. He is naturally compelling. When you don't need words to impress or actions to draw attention, you emit a clear energy. You do not live for the validation of others. You live by principle. And a principled life needs no noise, only unwavering presence. Silence also filters. It grants you space to observe the other, from enough distance to see what is true. Without constant conversations and emotional exchanges, you see more clearly the other's behavior, priorities, and initiative. That helps you decide from clarity, not fleeting emotion. Silence is a way of building value. In love, value often lies not in what you say, but in knowing when to say nothing. The less you react to impulsive behavior, the more you show that you cannot be manipulated. And this creates an invisible boundary. The other person no longer dares to use coldness or emotional games to control you. Intentional silence is also a profound psychological strategy. It creates a space of purposeful absence, an energy that compels the other to fill it with reflection, questioning, and at times, longing. Nothing makes a woman think of you more than when you don't react as expected. And when you do that with composure, you don't just preserve your value, you raise it. One important thing: silence is not a punishment. It's not a tactic to cause hurt or guilt. The silence of a Stoic man is not manipulation. It's a choice born of emotional discipline. He has no need to control others' feelings. He only seeks to preserve his own stability, and from there, create space for things to evolve naturally. When you practice intentional silence, you are sending a message. You are not someone to test emotionally. You do not respond to every signal because you do not need constant validation. And that is what sets you apart. Out there, most people react instantly. When ignored, they plead. When tested, they panic. When they lose attention, they scramble to reclaim it. But the man who chooses silence understands that true value needs no announcement. It simply exists, so fully that others feel it on their own. If she truly cares, she will feel that silence, not as rejection, but as space to hear herself again. And when she returns, the first thing she'll see won't be blame or anger, but a man who has not changed, not crumbled, not lost his way. And if she doesn't return, then that silence has preserved the most precious thing of all: your dignity and inner steadiness. You don't need to shout to be seen, because your silent presence, if grounded enough, has already become an irresistible voice. 4. Silence as a test of inner strength. In the journey of building and sustaining emotional relationships, one of the most confusing and emotionally triggering experiences is silence from the other person. Especially when a woman who once showed care, connection, and closeness suddenly becomes quiet or withdraws. many men immediately feel insecure. The common reaction is to seek answers, to regain attention, or to panic at the thought of losing the relationship. Yet from a Stoic perspective, this is not rejection, but a test, a rare opportunity to examine one's inner strength. Inner strength cannot be measured by words, gestures, or appearance. It only reveals itself in the face of adversity, hurt, or uncertainty. And nothing exposes one's internal state more clearly than ambiguity, like being left in silence without explanation. In such moments, every action, every choice a man makes, reflects the depth of his emotional maturity. Silence creates a void. This void is not merely the absence of information or emotion from the other. It is also the internal space the man must confront. It is within this space that his nature is revealed, whether he screams to fill it or remains still to observe himself. It is the moment he can no longer cling to anything outside and must return inward to find his anchor. Many confuse silence with the end, but in truth, silence is often a stage of transformation. It may be a time when the woman is questioning her feelings, going through personal upheaval, or simply creating distance to observe. In any case, her withdrawal is not an act against you. It is a condition set to observe, not only for her to observe you, but for you to observe yourself. A man without inner stability responds to silence with anxiety, insecurity, and a craving for reassurance. He may flood her with messages, demand clarity, create assumptions, or even grow angry. Yet all these reactions share a root, a loss of internal control. He cannot endure the void, so he scrambles to fill it, even with self-defeating behavior. In contrast, a man with inner strength chooses a different response. No panic, no rush, no dependence on external validation. He understands that another's silence does not have the power to define his worth. That key to him is a space for practicing emotional discipline, to prove, not to anyone else, but to himself, that he can remain composed in any circumstance. Stoic philosophy emphasizes this. The only thing we control is our own response. No one can govern the actions, emotions, or decisions of others, but each of us can choose how we respond to a given situation. When faced with a woman's silence, your reaction reveals your true strength, not in language, but in how you carry yourself. Inner strength is not about appearing tough. It is the ability to endure uncertainty without losing direction. When faced with not knowing what she's thinking, or not knowing if the relationship will continue, a man has a choice: be ruled by fear, or stand firm in self-worth. And this is the dividing line between impulsive reaction and disciplined mind. It's no accident that in many relationships, women choose silence to observe rather than direct confrontation. Words can hide many things. Silence cannot. In silence, a man can't perform. He can only be himself. If there is instability, it will surface easily. If there is steadiness, it will emerge. No words left to mask fear. No gestures to disguise unrest. Only behavior remains, and behavior speaks truth. Importantly, silence is not only a test of the relationship, it is a test of the personal path. A principled man will use this silence as an opportunity to elevate himself, physically, intellectually, emotionally, and in life direction. He doesn't wait for her to return before living fully. He lives fully whether someone is beside him or not. That is the foundation of his strength. Nothing is harder than remaining silent when you want to speak. Nothing demands more inner power than resisting the urge to seek validation from someone you deeply care for. Yet nothing is more compelling than the ability to stand still in the storm, without breaking, without blaming, without losing yourself. In that moment, the man does not need to prove he is strong. He becomes the living proof of maturity. Her silence does not strip you of value. That value is only lost if you respond as one who lacks emotional control. Her distance is not rejection unless you turn it into the reason you abandon yourself. When you maintain your center amid emotional turbulence, you don't just show others your solidity, you strengthen your trust in yourself. Not everyone sees that silence, if received with composure, can be a catalyst for clarity in the relationship. In the absence of contact, everything becomes still. And in that stillness, shallow bonds dissolve on their own, while real connections find their way back. The difference lies in how you face that time, as a victim, or as one who holds the reins. When you act with self-command, you create an undeniable result. If the other person truly feels something, they will come to see that you are not easily forgotten. You don't react like the rest. You don't need to win back a place in someone's heart. You hold your ground by not abandoning yourself. And that is what compels reflection. Ultimately, inner strength is not forged in ease. It is formed and proven in moments of trial, especially in invisible trials like the silence of someone you love. When you can stay composed amid the unclear, you preserve not only your appeal, but something even greater, your dignity and your enduring personal growth. 5. Stillness is not passivity. Stillness is often misunderstood as passivity, a sign of surrender, disengagement, or lack of initiative. In the context of a romantic relationship, when a woman withdraws, stops responding, or grows distant, a man's choice to remain silent is often seen as indifference, indecision, or failure to defend the relationship. But in Stoic philosophy, stillness is not apathy. It is a profound state of self-possession, where action is no longer dictated by impulsive emotion or fear of loss. Stillness does not mean standing still and doing nothing. It means acting from awareness, without rushing, without reacting, without allowing circumstances to pull you away from your inner stability. A man who chooses stillness amid emotional turbulence is not avoiding action. He is simply rejecting reactive behavior. He is observing, analyzing, and choosing his response with purpose. In many cases, stillness is the hardest choice to make, especially when the other person changes their tone, grows quiet, or becomes unclear. The self-protective instinct compels many to act. Send a message, demand clarity, or seek reassurance to ease emotional discomfort. But action born of fear often produces negative results. It reveals instability and places pressure on the other person, widening the distance. By contrast, when a man can remain still in tense moments without losing touch with his core values, he is demonstrating a high degree of self-control. He is not drawn into emotional games, nor is he forced into premature reaction. This doesn't mean he takes no action, but that his action is grounded in reason, not emotion. Active stillness is a deliberate behavior. In that state, the man continues working, maintaining his personal rhythm, developing his body and mind, and refining himself day by day. That growth doesn't stem from a need to prove something to anyone, but from a commitment to himself. He chooses growth not to attract or regain attention, but because it is the right thing to do, regardless of whether the relationship continues. Stillness does not equate to waiting. A still man is not sitting in hope of the other's return. He lives fully in each present moment, using the time apart as a space to reassess who he is, what he's doing, and whether he's aligned with his guiding principles. It is precisely this detachment from tying self-development to the relationship's outcome that allows him to maintain agency in his behavior. In a world where quick responses and emotional displays are often seen as markers of sincerity, a man's calm stillness becomes intriguing. That's when the other begins to wonder, why doesn't he react like others? Why doesn't he beg, get jealous, or panic? And those questions lead to attention, not the kind you demand, but the kind you earn through unfurling presence. A man who is still yet active is not governed by another's emotional tides. He may notice the woman pulling away, but he does not lose focus. He acknowledges it, but does not let it overtake his reason. He continues doing what must be done: reading, training, finishing projects, maintaining healthy habits. In these quiet actions, he reaffirms his core truth, that he is a self-sustaining system, not dependent on external affirmation to function. Stillness is also a sign of inner strength. Only a strong man feels no need to react to every fluctuation. He knows when to speak and when to remain silent. He does not avoid confrontation, but neither does he feel the need to resolve everything immediately. Sometimes clarity doesn't come from conversation, but from time. And the still man accepts this. He doesn't rush to find explanations. He lets the truth unfold naturally. The key difference between active and passive stillness is intelligence. The passive wait without direction. They do nothing, hoping circumstances will change. The Stoic chooses to act on what he can control. He develops himself instead of trying to change others. He chooses inner order instead of meddling in the uncontrollable. No image remains attractive if it collapses in the face of change. A woman may step back to see if you will fall apart. And when you don't, when you hold your stillness and move forward, not with words but with disciplined action, you show that your presence is not easily shaken. Stillness also protects your dignity. When someone is unclear, overreacting can make you look small. But when you remain composed, you avoid being drawn into ungainly conversations or self-harming behaviors. Stillness gives you the space to observe and respond only when necessary. The proactive quality of stillness is also revealed in the ability to reset priorities. When a woman steps back, instead of asking, "Why did she do this?" the calm man asks, "Where am I on my life path? What needs focus at this stage? What have I neglected by being overly absorbed in this relationship?" These questions draw attention back inward, where you retain full authority. Maintaining stillness in relationships is a declaration. You don't need to chase fleeting emotions to prove anything. You are prepared to move forward with someone who is understanding, patient, and mild. And if the other is not that person, then your silence becomes a wordless rejection, strong, respectful, and clear. Stillness doesn't destroy relationships. It only reveals which ones lack the depth to endure. When you remain silent, but continue living with intent, you create the ideal condition for the other to recognize your true value. And if there's a return, it will be voluntary, driven by understanding, not the pressure of undisciplined action. Ultimately, stillness is a form of communication. But unlike words, it demands no reply. It only asks for awareness. The one who receives the message within your stillness is listening with intuition. And if there is real connection, active stillness won't weaken the bond. It will deepen it. 6. Don't prove your worth, become it. In romantic relationships, especially when the other person begins to withdraw or turn silent, a common reaction is to do everything possible to prove one's worth. They try to explain, justify, perform, and sometimes even plead to regain attention. They want the other to know they're still good, still worthy of love, still someone worth keeping. But in that behavior lies a deep paradox. The more you try to prove your value, the more it fades. Stoic thought is grounded in this principle. Worth does not come from recognition, but from the way you live and conduct yourself. In this context, a man doesn't need to say he has value. He needs only to become such a man. Worth is not something to declare, but a state cultivated from within. And that state does not require external validation to matter. When a man tries to prove his worth to a woman who is pulling away, he's placing his focus on what lies beyond his control. His actions are driven by someone else's expectations, and his self-worth becomes dependent on how others perceive him. This not only creates inner imbalance, but also reveals emotional instability. When someone senses you are seeking their approval, they see you as lacking, and that weakens your appeal. In contrast, becoming truly valuable is an inward journey. It doesn't begin with watching what others think, but with asking yourself, who are you? What do you believe in? And how do you want to live? When you have clarity of purpose, disciplined habits, and consistency in thought and behavior, you radiate a coherent energy. And that energy is what makes you unforgettable. Not because you try to be, but because your presence speaks for itself. One of the most common mistakes is to equate attention with value. Many believe they are only worthy when noticed. So when they are left in silence, they panic. They begin to do something to be seen, from excessive gestures of care to emotionally charged behaviors. But those who truly carry value do not compete for attention. Their stability, self-mastery, and continual growth make them stand out without trying too hard. The woman may step back, test, or retreat, but in that very moment, she's observing one thing above all. Do you change yourself to win her back, or do you remain yourself? If you instantly shift to please her, you're no longer you. You become what you think she wants. But if you stay anchored to your core values and remain on your path, she'll recognize that you're not someone who can be controlled. And that is the mark of inner magnetism. Lasting attraction does not come from words or appearances. It comes from one thing: who you are when no one is watching. The man who keeps training when no one's watching, keeps learning with no recognition, lives with discipline without instant reward, is the one becoming value, not just performing it. The time spent in silence is the perfect moment to refocus on yourself. It gives you a chance to rebuild everything: your body, your mind, your emotions, your finances, your life goals. And when you do it, not so she sees it, but simply because you want to be better. You've entered a higher level of personal growth. Such people don't just attract, they inspire. On the other hand, those who try to prove their worth often fall into inner contradiction. They want others to see them as strong, yet behave dependently. They want to be perceived as self-sufficient, but act as if they can't live without reassurance. They say they're worthy, but seek validation to confirm it. And that contradiction is the first thing that erodes true value. Becoming valuable does not mean being perfect. It means you're on the path of becoming your best self, not for anyone else, but because you know it's worth it. Every small act, maintaining habits, rising early, training, learning new skills, mastering emotions, is a brick in the foundation of personal worth. And when that foundation is solid, you no longer need to prove anything. You simply exist. And that existence says everything. A man of true value does not react impulsively. He doesn't rush into action out of fear of loss. He doesn't use words to convince others to stay. His consistency in action, calmness in emotion, and clarity of purpose make him someone others must think carefully before leaving. Because to walk away from him is not just to lose a companion, it is to lose a rare source of steady energy. In emotional trials, those who strive to prove their worth often lose themselves quickly. They abandon healthy habits, compromise principles, and change to suit another's mood. They trade inner stability for fleeting attention. But attention can be bought. Value cannot. Value cannot be bargained for, demanded, or handed out. It exists only when built day by day through action, discipline, and commitment to oneself. And if a woman cannot recognize that, you don't need to convince her. That only shows she's not yet mature enough to see what is truly precious. You don't need to argue for you. You don't need to prove. You only need to keep evolving. And when you walk your path with your head held high, you send a message louder than words. I don't need to be chosen to have worth. I already see. Not proving your worth doesn't mean you don't care. It simply means you don't need to do something special for others to see you deserve it. Because your consistent presence, calm, steady, purposeful, and moving forward, is already the most powerful affirmation. Ultimately, the man who becomes value is not afraid of losing others. He understands that those who are right will stay, not because they were persuaded, but because they saw for themselves. And if someone leaves, he does not pull. Because his worth is not built on being chosen. It is built on living in alignment with what he believes. I've experienced being left in silence, the emptiness, and the desperate need to understand what was happening. And like many, I once reacted emotionally, sending message after message, imagining endless scenarios, then turning all that turmoil inward. But the more I tried to reclaim attention, the more I lost my inner balance. That was when I had to ask myself, was I acting out of genuine affection, or just clinging to something to fill the void inside? The answer wasn't pleasant, but it led me to begin practicing something that seemed simple: intentional silence and purposeful action. From that point, I began changing how I lived, waking up on time, training consistently, stopping the habit of over-explaining, and no longer seeking validation from outside. I learned to be patient with silence, no longer viewing someone's withdrawal as rejection, but as a quiet reminder. Return to yourself. If you're going through something similar, remember this: you don't need to prove your worth to anyone. Let your steadiness and composure speak for you. And if there is something worth pursuing, let it not be a person, but the best version of yourself. Silence won't lead you astray if you already know your path. Live like a wall, unshaken by the wind. Let calmness be the loudest voice you never have to shout. And if you found value in this message, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future content. And remember, the truly strong are those who can stay silent and never be forgotten. I'll see you in the next video.